Voice of the Georgetown Hoyas, longtime voice, Rich Chvotkin. Rich, thanks so much for coming on. How are you today?
I'm fine. In fact, I'm just sitting here in the dome watching Georgetown practice. I'm somewhat removed so that they don't hear me on this thing, and you guys can get a clear kind of broadcast.
Well, we appreciate that. And we had Alan Griffin on yesterday, assistant coach for the Orange, and we asked him about the game and the rivalry. And he said, this is the most important game we play this season. Anytime Syracuse and Georgetown get together, it still means something. He said, we may have to explain it to the players now, but for the staff and for the school, this game's important. Rich, from the Georgetown side of things, does this game still matter maybe a little bit more than all the rest?
In fact, Athletic Director Lee Reed on the plane up said to me, quote, "This is a very, very important game for Georgetown, as it obviously is for Syracuse." It's right before the conference season for Georgetown. We have Creighton coming in on Wednesday night. Obviously, you've played one conference game, but this is big. This is the 100th meeting between these two clubs, and anybody who knows the history of Georgetown and Syracuse, this is a major, major event on both teams' schedules.
You've called a lot of them. Is there a favorite memory you have from this rivalry, a favorite moment, a favorite game, favorite venue? What comes to mind for you when you look back?
Well, I think in looking back, and believe it or not, gentlemen, this is my 85th of the prior 99.
Good for you.
This is my 85th. I mean, I've been around these parts a long time, and I think my favorite game has to be the closing of Manley Fieldhouse. I think that set the tone. The first year of the Big East when Syracuse's 50-game winning streak was snapped. I think the game where Charles Smith, the length of the floor drive on a Sunday afternoon to beat Syracuse was another great ball game. Some of the games in the Garden, the Pearl Washingtons, the game with Andre Hawkins and the Ewing battles, I think those were marquee ball games. But I think the Manley Fieldhouse has to rank number one.
Yeah, all epic moments in this rivalry. All right, let's talk about this current team, Rich. And, let's start with Ed Cooley. How are things different with Ed Cooley running the show now?
Well, Ed Cooley, obviously in his second year, is trying to establish his program. He's still got a young team. This is a very, very young team. In fact, none of the players have ever come to the Carrier Dome. This is their first experience here, and that's why he probably wanted to get in two practices this afternoon and tomorrow, to play, to get acclimated to the court here. But it's still a work in progress. He's trying to blend the young kid, Thomas Sorber, in the middle with the veteran Peavy. He's got Jay Nepps back from last year, Malik Mack, the transfer from Harvard. So, they struggled against West Virginia, but hopefully they can right the ship against Syracuse. But what he's trying to do is really establish the defensive end, too. I think they played much better this year defensively. Offensively, there's still a work in progress.
You look at what they've done to this point, sitting at 7-2 right now, and lost West Virginia, lost to Notre Dame. They've beaten everybody else. No great wins per se on their schedule. The resume, honestly, very similar to what SU's dealing with right now. What have you learned about this team, I guess, through the first 9 games?
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned about them is they've got to shoot the ball much better. Obviously, defensively, they're playing much better. The Notre Dame game they lost 84-63. That was a big game for us. That was the first game that, to try to get a big fan base going and establish the culture. And Notre Dame shot 64% from the ball game. We shot 35%. You're not going to win many games when you shoot that. Against West Virginia, they were right there, led 30-28 at the half, and then West Virginia went on that monster run and hit 2 big critical three-pointers late in the ball game that just broke Georgetown's back. So, you figure with the 2 losses, we were hoping to beat Notre Dame. West Virginia, a little tougher ball game on the road. But this ball game here will be a real big test for Georgetown because you're going to play it probably among, a crowd of 20 to 25,000 against a team, obviously Syracuse wanting a big win before they step back into conference play. So this is going to be big. I think the big thing for Georgetown, they've got to keep Sorber on the floor. They have a very thin bench up front. You can't let him play only 18 to 20 minutes. He's got to be on the floor 28 to 30 to 32 minutes, and we're not very deep on the interior, so that's going to be a big struggle because Syracuse is a great rebounding team.
And along those lines, you mentioned Syracuse as you're getting ready for this game. I mean, what stands out to you about the Orange? And you mentioned the rebounding right there. What is it about SU that you think might give Georgetown some trouble?
Well, I think the play of Jaquan Carlos obviously had 12 assists in the game against Albany. I mean, he can quarterback the club. Obviously, Donnie Freeman playing at a very, very high level. Elijah Moore can score, in bunches. And then, of course, you have the veterans, Bell and Lampkin, and, they're a sound ball club. I mean, if anybody thinks they can take Syracuse lightly, they have another thing coming. And they're playing here at home on a Saturday afternoon when both teams are desperate for a win. But Syracuse has a lot of weapons. You look at, obviously they're missing Starling, but they still have a lot of players that can play the game. And like I just said, on the interior, they're very, very strong, and Jair Davis has been playing at a very high level, so they have a lot of weapons that can score the ball. You score 100 points on 2 occasions this year. It tells you how they can fill it up.
I mentioned that, Alan Griffin told us yesterday that they have to kind of inform the players about the rivalry. You've been around it a really long time. Are you finding much the same thing, at Georgetown, that, they're not in the same conference anymore? And, you got these young guys coming in that didn't grow up on the rivalry like used to be the case. Does Ed Cooley and his staff, do they have to kind of, let these guys know what this game means to both these programs?
Well, Ed Cooley obviously was coaching the Big East for a long, long time. He knows what the Syracuse-Georgetown rivalry means, and what he was trying to do is instill on the kids. This is still like a Big East game. When we played Notre Dame, his mindset, and when we played West Virginia, this was like the old Big East. And I think he still has affinity for the old Big East and was trying to let the players know you got to play like it was a Big East game. I mean, every possession matters. And I think that's the message to his kids this afternoon in practice. You can't take any possessions off.
And then lastly, Rich, I mean, how do you see this game playing itself out Saturday come 2:30 when they tip it up?
I think a big thing is if we can, play with them on the glass, I think that's going to be a big factor. We've got to be able to shoot the ball well, and if we're not shooting the ball well, we got to be back in transition because, Syracuse can run the floor. I think where we got hurt was in West Virginia. We just didn't get back on defense in transition. So rebounding, transition, not turn the ball over. And gentlemen, you got to make shots. When you get those open looks, you got to knock them down because if you don't shoot the ball, you shoot 30-35%, you're not going to win many ball games. On the other end, Syracuse is not a great three-point shooting team, so maybe you could pack it in and help you on the defensive end with rebounding. But again, Syracuse has guys that can light it up. Bell can score, Moore can score. Obviously, get the ball to Donnie Freeman, and Davis. So Georgetown's got to play tough defense. So this is going to be a very, very tough game.
Yeah, should be a close game. Should be a whole lot of fun. Rich, we'll let you get back to practice. Thanks so much for finding a few minutes for us. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, always enjoy coming up to Syracuse. This is a marquee game, and I think everybody on Georgetown, even these young kids who've never played here, are looking forward to the matchup on Saturday afternoon.
All right, Rich Chvotkin, our guest here on the show, the voice of the Georgetown Hoyas, 2:30 tip inside the Dome on Saturday.